Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Thousand World. It is a place where numerous planes intersect, a place where many clans live, and a place where a group of lords assemble. The heavenly sovereigns appear one by one from the lower planes, and they will all display a legend that others would desire as they pursue the road of being a ruler in this boundless world. In the endless fire territory that the Flame Emperor controls, thousands of fire blazes through the heavens. Inside the martial realm, the power of the Martial Ancestor frightens the heaven and the earth. At the West Heaven Temple, the might of the Emperor of 100 battles is absolute. In the Northern Desolate Hill, a place filled with thousands of graves, the Immortal Owner rules the world. A boy from the Northern Spiritual Realm comes out, riding on a Nine Netherworld Bird, as he charges into the brilliant and diverse world. Just who can rule over their destiny of their path on becoming a great ruler? In the Great Thousand World, many strive to become a great ruler. The Great Ruler, Season 1, Episode 1. The scorching sun was like a flame. The burning sunlight poured down from the sky, causing the entire land to be in transpiration. The slightly drooped willows and the disappearing leaves made it seem like it was sickly in appearance. Within the clearing where the sunlight projected through the branches and leaves, several hundred figures were quietly sitting cross-legged. It was a group of young men and women. At that time, all of them have a serious expression while they closed their eyes. They would let out their breaths periodically, showing a rhythmic beat. As they breathe in and out, subtle lights which are difficult to be seen with the naked eye would appear in their surroundings. The gentle breeze blew quietly and caused their clothes to flutter. It was quite a spectacular sight. In front of the hundreds of shadows, there is a stone platform. On top of the stone platform, there too, was a figure quietly sitting cross-legged. His hands were attuned to each other. His fingers were overlapping as he closed his eyes. It was as if he had entered a certain state of cultivation. The figure also had a youthful appearance. He had a soft and slightly disheveled black hair, yet his seemingly innocent face was a little thin. It gave off a very comfortable feeling when others looked at him. At this moment, many lights that could be seen with the naked eye were surrounding the boy. And from those lights, a mysterious energy seemed to be rushing into his body. Below the stone, many youths suddenly opened their eyes. They looked at the lights surrounding the boy on the stone platform and could not resist licking their lips. An envious expression appeared on their faces, and whispers began to destroy the earlier silence. Brother Mu really is amazing. All of us are still sensing the spiritual aura within the world, but he has already successfully entered the spiritual movement stage, as expected from the #1 person in our East Branch Earth class. That's of course. Don't just mention the East Branch. I think that there aren't many people of the same age who can compare with Brother Mu in the entire Northern Spiritual Academy. A boy in gray clothes that was close to the front seemed to be quite familiar with the boy on the stone platform. He could hear everybody's whispers and could not help but smile. He lowered his voice and said, "Brother Mu is a person who was selected and participated in the spiritual road. Within the entire Northern Spiritual Realm, only Brother Mu obtained the right to participate in it. You should know that the ones who participate in the spiritual road are all monsters, right?" Back then, the entire Northern Spiritual Realm was bustling because of that matter. The people that came out from there will basically be accepted by the 5 great academies. 5 great academies? Many youths heard the words which were extremely dazzling to them and could not help but swallow. A boiling desire filled their eyes. That place could be regarded as the ultimate dream for all the youths. Not only was the selection for the 5 great academies harsh, the ones that could enter them were all geniuses. No matter who enters it, they would have a promising future. Brother Mu really is amazing. But Brother Mu only seemed to have participated in it for a year. I heard others say that Brother Mu is the first person to be kicked out of the spiritual road before the time was over. A boy hesitated and quietly said that. However, he soon added, "All of us know Brother Mu's abilities, even those geniuses that came from all over the world and are inside the spiritual road. Brother Mu will not be inferior to them. He must have been kicked out because he received an unfair treatment." Many boys and girls looked at each other. This matter was not something secret within the Northern Spiritual Academy, and even within the entire Northern Spiritual Realm. While they felt regret from it, they were also quite curious. They wanted to know the reason why the brilliant and slightly arrogant Brother Mu that they believed in would be kicked out of the spiritual road. The boy in gray clothes pouted his lips and said in disapproval, It must be that the people in the spiritual road were jealous of Brother Mu, and they used various means to force him out. But that's fine. With Brother Mu's abilities, he will be able to enter the 5 great academies eventually. At that time, people will naturally understand. The youths all understood the message. Although they knew that the Brother Mu that they were talking about was extremely talented, but the 5 great academies wasn't that easy to enter. After all, he had only trained in the spiritual road for 1 year. It cannot be mentioned as a successful training. Compared to the geniuses that truly came out of the spiritual road, there should be quite a bit of a difference. Bam! However, just when they were discussing about this, a piece of shattered wood suddenly flew down from the stone platform and hit the forehead of the boy in gray clothes. A scolding voice soon followed. Suling, did you really just treat me as a decoration? You don't think I will inform Teacher Mo and make all of you stay in the East Branch for tutorial training during the next vacation? Many boys and girls hurriedly looked up. They could see that the boy who was training on top of the stone platform had opened up his eyes. The pair of pitch black eyes were like the night sky. The place where the spiritual aura was at the fullest was at the mouth. It was showing a slight smile. The smile was warm and bright, and like a finishing touch, it made the boy's face appear to be more handsome. They must admit that the boy had quite the taste. Hey, Brother Mu, don't! We finally have a break. I still want to head back for some fun. If my father knew that I did something this disgraceful, he would definitely beat me to death. The boy in gray clothes clutched his forehead and let out a smile. The boys and girls in the surrounding all let out sounds of laughter, causing the atmosphere to become quite lively. You also know that your father is quite vicious. If you are not able to advance into the spiritual movement stage in 3 months, you're just waiting to be hit. The boy called Mu Chen shook his head and said with a sigh, How is it that easy to advance into the spiritual movement stage? I am not a monster like you, Brother Mu, who could casually participate in the spiritual road. Suling pouted his mouth and immediately blocked his mouth. Although this matter was not a secret within the entire northern spiritual realm, and Mu Chen did not forbid it, the matter of being kicked out was not a glorious act. The boy called Mu Chen let out a smile. His expression did not change much, and he raised his head slightly. He stared at the branches that were mangled with light spots, and his eyes clearly showed a complex and nostalgic appearance. The spiritual road, huh? I wonder how those people are doing. They should have finished their training already. If that's the case, they will soon be able to enter the 5 great academies. She too. Mu Chen bit his lips. A girl in black dress with a cold and pretty face as well as a slim figure, who would carry a dark black long sword on her back at any time, flashed through his mind. As the image of the beautiful girl moved, her bright silver hair that shone like the Milky Way danced along with the wind. It was this mysterious and cold girl who would make others feel like she was insane when she started training, who chased him for over half a year in the spiritual road in order to kill him. The reason behind it was that he saved her once. This was also the reason why Mu Chen bit his lips. However, when he was finally forced to leave, she was the first one to wield her sword and block the person in front of him without any hesitation. Thinking about the face, which never held a hint of expression and had the potential to cause a disaster, display a slight, cold killing intent, Mu Chen could not resist and fell into a trance. How nostalgic. Oh, isn't it little Brother Mu, who was the only one in the northern spiritual realm to participate in the spiritual road? You were bringing others to train again? No wonder Teacher Mo would think highly of you. Just when Mu Chen was immersed in these complex feelings, a slightly stingy voice rang out. His calm face looked up, and he could see a dozen figures walking over slowly. The leader was a boy with an arrogant face. At this moment, he was chewing on some grass and smiled as he looked at Mu Chen. Liu Qiao, what are the West Branch people planning to do over here at the East Branch? Are you looking for a beating? The boy whom Mu Chen referred to as Su Ling stood up and sneered when he saw the group of people. The hundreds of East Branch students in the open space also stood up. They showed an unwelcoming gaze towards the people that are approaching. With numbers, they had quite the momentum. Within this Northern Spiritual Academy, it is divided into East Branch and West Branch. The 2 branches would often have many competitions, but overall, the West Branch has always been stronger than the East Branch in the past. In front of the West Branch, many East Branch students would avoid them. However, during this 1 year, the situation changed a lot. The reason behind this change was because of the presence of Mu Chen. 3 months ago, in a competition between the two Earth-class students of the two branches, the number 3 of the West Branch, Zhedong, had lost to Mu Chen. This allowed many East Branch students to finally vent out their feelings and also caused the West Branch to become less arrogant. And now, the people from the West Branch actually ran over to provoke Mu Chen. Su Ling and the others could not endure this. Oh, so the East Branch is actually becoming more and more cocky. Did you think that with just Mu Chen, you can challenge the West Branch? Liu Chen saw the group of people from the East Branch, yet he did not show any fear. Instead, he lifted up the corner of his mouth and pointed at a high platform nearby and said as he grinned, "Do you dare to test it out with a fight?" Su Ling and the others looked over. They could see many figures standing at the high platform. These figures were all looking over toward this side, and after seeing the familiar faces, the expression of Su Ling and the others changed. It's the West Branch's Heaven-class seniors. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, it is not only split into East and West Branch, it is also divided into Earth and Heaven class, and Mu Chen and them were only in the Earth class. The people standing on the high platform were all seniors of the West Branch Heaven class. Their strength is naturally much more powerful than them. The moment the expression of Su Ling and the others changed, the Heaven class seniors all laughed at them from above and began to talk with each other. So that is the East Branch's Mu Chen? He is currently someone famous within the Northern Spiritual Academy and even within the Northern Spiritual Realm. I can't believe he advanced to the spiritual movement stage at such an age. Although it is only the initial phase of the spiritual movement stage, but he has the qualifications to ascend to Heaven class. That's quite amazing. That's pretty good. So a talent finally appears out of the East Branch. When he ascends to the Heaven class, there will probably be a bit of pressure for us. West Branch Heaven class. It was said that this boy was selected to participate in the spiritual road. However, he was kicked out for an unknown reason. It's quite funny. It's the first time I've heard of such a thing. Could it be that it selected the wrong person, so it threw him out? Haha. Among the group, there was a girl in red clothes. She had a slender figure and skin that was just like snow. Her beautiful oval-shaped face was somewhat charming. She leaned against the railing and looked at the open space with her beautiful eyes. Then her gaze stopped at the boy called Mu Chen, as if she had great interest in him. "Ah, Hong Ling, you seem to know Mu Chen, right?" A senior from the Heaven class smiled as he asked. From everyone's position, it is evident that she was the central figure of this small group. Yes, his father is one of the territory lords within the Northern Spiritual Realm. It can be considered that we have some relationship with each other. We played together when we were young, the girl called Hong Ling said casually. It was said that he seemed to like you at first? Hong Ling blinked. She looked at the boy that was sitting straight-legged nearby. At this moment, a beam of sunlight pierced through the branches and leaves and landed directly on the boy's face. It formed a faint light arc, and it was extremely pleasing to the eyes. This caused the girl to stare blankly for a bit. She seemed to vaguely recall the boy that chased after her butt when she was little. Only back then, he did not have any compelling features. She, too, did not pay much attention to him. However, who would have imagined that this boy, who had grown apart from her, would actually become the only one to receive the qualifications to participate in the spiritual road in the Northern Spiritual Realm? Back then, Mu Chen was quite the celebrity, but that too began to fade when he was suddenly kicked out of the spiritual road. That was when we were young. How could that be considered as liking me? Hong Ling let out a smile as if she did not care, but her eyes stared at Mu Chen once more. Right now, the latter had followed her and entered the Northern Spiritual Academy. He then began to reveal his outstanding talents. Although he has not become the #1 in the Northern Spiritual Academy, the fact that this excellent person liked her gave her some face. Even if she knew that deep inside, this matter was more like a rumor, but a girl would still feel some pride in it at this age. Ha 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 ha, Hong Ling's taste isn't that normal. Although this Mu Chen is quite good, but he still hasn't made Hong Ling fall for him. Could it be that you didn't see that even Lin Shu failed? That is a superb individual who is ranked 7th in the Northern Spiritual Academy. He has already advanced to the spiritual movement middle phase. There is quite a gap between him and Mu Chen. It seems that the only one within the Northern Spiritual Academy who could make Hong Ling take a second look is big brother Liu Mubai. The moment the name Liu Mubai was mentioned, even the expressions of the Heaven class seniors paused for a bit as if they felt a little pressure. Ranked first in the Northern Spiritual Academy, Liu Mubai, his father is also the largest territory lord in the Northern Spiritual Realm, and he was famed for his great strength. Whether it was appearance or strength, or even his background, it is a name that would easily attract a number of infatuated girls within the Northern Spiritual Academy. In the eyes of the West Branch students, everybody knew that Liu Mubai and Hongling were quite close. Although he has not yet plucked the prideful flower of the West Branch, but it should just be a matter of time before that happens. If Mu Chen were to successfully pass through the trial of the spiritual road and obtain the qualifications to enter the 5 great academies, that fame would naturally surpass Liu Mubai. Unfortunately, he was somehow kicked out of there. As a result, no matter who, when they compared the two of them, they would only laugh at Mu Chen. Su Ling and the others stared at the West Branch seniors on the high platform. Their imposing manner also became slightly weaker, especially when they saw the girl known as Hong Ling. Their eyes became passionate at first, then shrank down. She is a truly influential person within the Northern Spiritual Academy. There are quite a few followers even within the East Branch for her. Oi, Brother Mu, that is the West Branch's senior Hong Ling. There was a rumor that you liked her as a child. Su Ling leaned over to Mu Chen and whispered as he chuckled. After hearing this, Mu Chen could not help but bat an eye towards him. He indeed had some sort of relationship with Hong Ling when he was young, but at that age, who would know what love is? He simply wanted to find a playmate. However, his father and Hong Ling's father started to get in a discord quite often for the past few years. The relationship between both sides had gradually grown apart. It was unknown how this kind of rumor came up. Mu Chen could only helplessly shake his head. Then he stared at Liu Che, who had a provocative look on his face. A faint light of spiritual energy began to come out of his body, and he slowly clasped his palms. If you have something to say, then hurry up and say it. Mu Chen looked at the few individuals standing at the high platform nearby. His gaze stopped for a moment on that slender figure. Then he retracted his sight. Even though they are here, but if I want to beat you up, you would still suffer pain on your flesh even if they stop me. Towards the arrogant bastards from the West Branch, he did not like them as well. You! After Liu Che heard Mu Chen's words, his eyes suddenly showed fury. However, just after he shouted out angrily, he noticed that Mu Chen's mouth lowered slightly. The originally soft and brilliant face suddenly had a cold feeling coming out of it. This cold feeling was like a wild and ice-like knife. This feeling was like the awakening of a storm, and it, inadvertently, revealed an extraordinary sharpness. This feeling was absolutely something that an innocent youth would not be able to possess at this age. Liu Che swallowed the cry within his mouth. He stared in surprise at Mu Chen, and his facial color changed. He was definitely slightly afraid of the latter's strength. When Mu Chen defeated Shui Dong from the West Branch Earth class, he was there at the scene. Oh, he really is quite insolent. The seniors of the West Branch Heaven class, who were standing at the high platform, heard these words as well. They immediately began to frown and felt that they lost some face, especially because Hong Ling was present. Hong Ling also looked a little surprised at Mu Chen. She did not imagine that the seemingly gentle boy would also have such a masculine side to him. He seemed to be quite different than the boy back then. A couple of the West Branch Heaven class seniors could not endure it, jumped down the high platform and walked over slowly. Seeing them come over, Su Ling and the others all took a step back and were completely alert. Noticing this, Hong Ling did not stop them. After all, she was a person from the West Branch, and she too wanted to see whether the boy, who seemed ordinary to her before, would truly be dazzling after leaving his childhood. Brother Tong. After Liu Che noticed that these people were walking over, he felt happy. Then his eyes showed off a prideful feeling again as he looked at Mu Chen and the others. Seeing this, Mu Chen frowned slightly. However, there was not much fear within his expression. Although they were Heaven-class seniors, their strength was only at the spiritual movement stage initial phase. If they were to really fight, then they wouldn't be in an advantage either. The leading senior called Brother Tong nodded his head. His eyes stared at Mu Chen. But just when he wanted to speak, a sudden shout rang out from nearby. Tong Guan, you, West Branch Heaven-class people, actually came to the East Branch to bully our Earth-class students. You really don't put the East Academy within your sights, huh? The sudden shout made everybody freeze. After turning their heads around, they could see many figures rapidly coming from nearby. In the very front was a tall girl, Her black clothes were like ink, and it outlined a graceful curve. Her face was extremely pretty, and her long, bluish-black hair was tied into a ponytail. Her long legs were slender and slim, and her beauty was in no way inferior to Hong Ling. At this moment, the girl had a cold expression as she stared at Tongguan and the others. The people behind her also had an unwelcoming expression. "It's Senior Chenair." When Su Ling saw the girl in black clothes, he immediately became excited. A little bit of his innocent, youthful face turned slightly red. This person was known as one of the two flowers of the Northern Spiritual Academy, along with Hong Ling. Their suitors were numerous. He did not imagine that he would actually meet her here. "Oh, so it's Qianair." When Tongguan saw the girl in black clothes, he was also startled. His expression did not seem natural. Not only did Tang Qianair have many suitors within the Northern Spiritual Academy, her strength had also reached the spiritual movement middle phase. Within the heaven class of the Northern Spiritual Academy, she was considered to be quite excellent. The girl named Tang Qianair came to the side of Mu Chen. Her narrow eyes looked at Tongguan, then she looked at Hong Ling, who was at the high platform. The two girls stared at each other unyieldingly, and sparks seemed to fly from their eyes. "Why did you come over here?" Tang Qianair retracted her gaze and coldly asked. "Look at this point. Although we are people from the West Branch, the West Branch is still part of the Northern Spiritual Academy. Thus, it shouldn't be illegal for us to come over here, right?" Tongguan shrugged and smiled. Tang Qianair issued out a cold humph sound. Then she extended her slender hands and patted on Mu Chen's shoulders. She lowered her pointed chin and said, "Mu Chen is one of the East Branch's people. If you dare to cause trouble for him, then don't blame me for not being polite." As she talked, her black ponytail bounced valiantly, and she seemed to have a style of a big sister. "It seems that your luck with the ladies is quite good." Tongguan smiled at Mu Chen. The smile had a bit of mockery and a bit of jealousy. He also had some thoughts towards Tang Qianair, only that he never obtained any good intentions from her. Having luck with the ladies is also a type of strength. Mu Chen smiled as if he did not hear the mockery within his words. Compared to those guys from the spiritual road, Tongguan was really too inexperienced. From the high platform, Hong Ling looked at Mu Chen. She was somewhat disappointed and retracted her gaze. Was he still so lazy and cowardly like before? "Forget it. We did not come here to cause trouble to you today. We only wanted to inform you of one thing." Seeing that he would not be able to incite Mu Chen's fury, Tongguan also felt bored. He waved his hand towards Liu Chen, and the latter let out a cold smile and said, "Mu Chen, I am representing Big Brother Liu Yang to deliver you a message. 10 days later, during the competition between the two branches, he will select you as his opponent." Liu Yang. Hearing this name, the color on Su Ling and the others' faces changed. Liu Yang is the true #1 within the West Branch Earth class. It was said that he recently advanced to the spiritual movement stage. Ah, that's right. I'll tell you something else as well. 3 days ago, when Big Brother Liu Yang was tested, they discovered that he possesses a spiritual pulse. Although it is only human level, Liu Chen gloated as he stared at Mu Chen and smiled. Human level spiritual pulse? When these words were said, not only did Su Ling and the others' facial complexion change, even Tang Qianair was slightly moved. Within the entire Northern Spiritual Academy, there will never be more than a handful of students who possess a spiritual pulse. Who would have imagined that Liu Yang actually had it too? Human-level spiritual pulse? Tongguan smacked his lips and gave a pitiful stare at Mu Chen. Liu Yang also had the strength of a spiritual movement initial phase, but if you include the human-level spiritual pulse, it would be difficult for a spiritual movement middle phase to defeat him. It appears that Mu Chen was out of luck. Big Brother Liu Yang said that it is fine if you do not dare to accept it, but just don't show up on that day, then he would not embarrass you. Liu Chen had a strange smile. If Mu Chen did not appear on that day, then his reputation within the East Branch would shatter instantly. "You're bullying him way too much." Tang Qianair frowned as she shouted. "Senior Qianair, you shouldn't blame us. A person should always maintain a low profile. He shouldn't believe that he could be proud because he obtained the qualification to the spiritual road due to luck." Liu Chen said and curled his lips up. "You!" Tang Qianair flew into fury. But just before she headed forward, a hand gripped onto her shoulder. She turned her head around and saw that a brilliant smile appeared on Mu Chen's face. "Yes, go tell Liu Yang that I will be waiting for him." "How courageous! Then we will wait to see your excellent performance." Liu Chen gave a thumbs up to Mu Chen and grinned. He then laughed as he turned away. With his expression, it was evident that he could not wait until the competition 10 days later. After Liu Chen, Tong Guan, and the others left, Hong Ling, who was on the high platform, stared at him for a while before turning around, leaving as well. Brother Mu, are you really going to accept that Liu Yang's challenge? It won't be easy to deal with him now since he has a spiritual pulse. Su Ling and the others stared at the departing Tong Guan and asked in concern. I'll do my best, Mu Chen casually said. Oi, you're so stupid. They were obviously provoking you. Now you must accept the challenge, Tang Chenner said with an irritated voice. Relax, Sister Chenner. I know what I'm doing. Mu Chen smiled. Tang Chenner frowned in puzzlement. Her eyes stared at his innocent face. He seemed to have a bright and gentle smile, but she did not know why she felt something hidden deep inside his eyes. Anyways, I won't be the one to be disgraced when that happens. Tang Chenner let out a sigh and said with dissatisfaction, Sister Chenner seems to be very concerned about me. Mu Chen stared at the irritated yet beautiful face and could not help but laugh as he said that. I don't care if you are dead. Tang Chenner's face flushed for a bit. She immediately batted her eye at Mu Chen and said, I was only worried that you were beaten half to death and will disgrace the East Branch's face. Mu Chen smiled. Tang Chenner's father is also one of the territory lords within the Northern Spiritual Realm and had an excellent relationship with his father. The two families always contacted each other, so his relationship with Tang Chenner was also very good. That's right, there was one news that I heard recently. Tang Chenner waved at Su Ling to move them out of the way, and then her eyes stared at Mu Chen. I heard it from the principal. It seems that the spiritual road has finally ended. Mu Chen's body trembled and he looked up. He let out a breath, so it was finally over. It was said that there were many insane individuals that appeared in the spiritual road this time. Among them, there is one that is extremely terrifying. He seemed to have the heaven-level spiritual pulse that is rarely seen even within 10,000 years. The 5 great academies were fighting so much for him that they were bleeding. The spiritual pulse is divided into 3 types: heaven, earth, and human. It will bring numerous benefits to their training. In general, a person who possesses a spiritual pulse would have a much faster training speed compared to normal individuals. They would also experience many shortcuts. And for so many years, there was never an earth-level spiritual pulse that appeared within the Northern Spiritual Academy, not to mention even a heaven-level spiritual pulse. From this, you can see just how rare a spiritual pulse is. Tang Chenner stuck out her red tongue and was extremely cute and lovely. A heaven-level spiritual pulse. I've never seen one before. As expected, the ones that participated in the spiritual road are all insane people. That's right, that's right. You also participate in the spiritual road. Do you know who that person is? He should be Ji Xuan, right? Mu Chen said in a faint voice. It was a name that was etched deeply into his memory. You know him? Tang Chenner said in surprise. Yes, I know him. He is indeed quite an amazing person. Mu Chen smiled, lowered his eyes and said, I nearly killed him. Tang Chenner's beautiful eyes widened up. She stared at the innocent face in front of her that suddenly turned cold. She stammered as she asked, Is that true? It's a lie. You actually believed in it? I was a person who was kicked out in the middle. How could I compare with the superb individual that the 5 great academies were fighting over to get? Mu Chen's cold expression vanished instantly. He stared at Tang Chenner with a surprised expression and could not resist laughing. Tang Chenner bit her teeth in resentment. She seemed to want to bite him twice, but she still endured it. She said with a sigh, You only advanced to the spiritual movement stage. You haven't learned any spiritual arts yet, right? I heard that Liu Yang has already been practicing. Spiritual arts, huh? I will learn some when I go back this time. It's just the right time. My dad told me to find him after I advanced to the spiritual movement stage. Mu Chen smiled as he spoke. Yes, then I'm leaving first. Tang Chenner nodded. Mu Chen's father was still one of the territory lords within the Northern Spiritual Realm. He should be able to prepare a decent spiritual art for Mu Chen. Thus, she did not say much more and waved her hand. Her ponytail swung as she twisted her body to leave. That's right. Tang Chenner walked gracefully for a bit, then turned her head back to stare at Mu Chen. She thought for a while and said, If you do not think that you have any chance of winning, how about I beat that guy Liu Yang for you? Although his big brother Liu Mubai would be a bit troublesome, can't you believe in me a bit more? Mu Chen said helplessly. How did she even think of such a method? You fail to understand a person's kindness, Tang Qian'er said angrily. If other people in the Northern Spiritual Academy wanted her help, she would refuse to do so. But yet, why would this guy be the only one to have a detestable expression? After thinking up to this point, she stormed away in anger. Mu Chen watched Tang Qian'er's moving figure disappearing. He also let out a smile and immediately muttered, "Since the spiritual road has ended, she should have entered the 5 great academies as well, right? I wonder which one she has entered." Thinking back when he had to leave, among the lush forest, a girl with long silver hair used a pair of green eyes and watched him quietly. "I will wait for you at the 5 great academies. If you do not come..." Within the girl's slender hand, she was holding a sword. She lifted it up until it was in front of his chest and gently poked him at the location of his heart. "I will kill him, but..." The girl stared at him with her eyes as clear as glass. "I do not like people who readily admit their failure. But this time, it can't be considered as your loss. At least I liked it." The gentle wind blew and raised the girl's proud and bright silver hair. On her cold, white face, a slight tint of red appeared. Although it was faint, it was still dazzlingly beautiful. "So you must come." The Northern Spiritual Realm is split into 9 territories. Each one is controlled by a lord, and between these 9 territories, they are either allied or oppose each other. That is also how the Northern Spiritual Realm has always maintained the situation of 9 territories. Aside from the 9 territories, there is still a powerful force to be reckoned with in the Northern Spiritual Realm. That is the Northern Spiritual Academy. However, compared to the 9 territories that cause many disputes, the Northern Spiritual Realm has always maintained neutral. They do not have any ambition for competing over the land. They would only stick to their area and attract students over. It is because of this that the Northern Spiritual Academy has such a high status within the Northern Spiritual Realm. And the Northern Spiritual Academy also holds the spots which will allow them to enter the 5 great academies. This is something that all the various lords want, because they all understood, although they had a decent position within the Northern Spiritual Realm, but they could not compare to the 5 great academies. Thus, they would send their children, once they are of age, to the Northern Spiritual Academy to train in order to obtain these spots. Therefore, the force that one must not offend within the Northern Spiritual Realm is the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Territory, Mu City. The moment that Mu Chen walked out of the transverse spiritual array, a bustling sound entered his ears. He looked at the prospering Mu City and let out a slight smile. The Mu City is the main city within the Mu Territory, and his father, Mu Feng, is the Mu Territory's lord. "Little Lord? Little Lord, you came back from the Northern Spiritual Academy. Hurry and report to the Territory Lord." Near the transverse spiritual array, there were a few Mu Territory guards protecting it. The instant that they saw the boy walking out of the spiritual array, they were surprised for a moment, but soon they suddenly rejoiced and came over. "I've troubled all of you, but it's fine if I go back myself." Mu Chen directed a smile toward the guards. He grew up in this place and was familiar with many people. Although he was the son of the Territory Lord, his attitude was excellent. Thus, he was quite welcome within the Mu Territory. He said farewell to the passionate guards and flew off toward the center of the city. Shortly after, a large estate appeared within his eyes. In front of the estate, there were 2 large words, Mu Estate. It was evident that the Mu Estate was heavily guarded. However, Mu Chen did not care about it all and directly ran inside. The guards also let out a warm smile after they recognized him and bowed down to him. Following that, they no longer cared about it. "Dad!" Mu Chen charged into the estate and stormed into the living room. He then noticed that there were 2 figures. On the seat of the host was a man with a black robe. He had an upright body and a determined expression on his face. The only thing that made him look slightly old was the white hair floating out of his head. But you could see vaguely that he must have been a handsome person when he was young. That person is Mu Chen's father, Mu Feng. He is also the lord of the Mu Territory. At the right-hand seat of Mu Feng, there was a slim, middle-aged man. Within that man's pupil was a hint of trouble, and he seemed to be a little bit dark. His tiny lips revealed a stern atmosphere, but that stern atmosphere dispersed a lot after he saw Mu Chen rushing into the living room. Between his 2 brows, a gentle smile surfaced. "It's fine if you come back. Why did you have to shout?" Mu Feng placed down the things in his hand and looked at the boy that came in through the door. He could not help but scold him gently. However, there was warmth coming out from the depths of his eyes. "Territory Lord, it is rare for little Mu to come back. It is naturally that we would feel happy. The skinny middle-aged man smiled as he spoke. It seems like only Uncle Joe understands. Mu-Chen sat down on a chair and grinned at the skinny man. Through the way they spoke, you could tell that they were quite close. Uncle Joe is named Joe Ye. He is also a lifetime friend of his father. Back then, he followed his father and killed within the northern spiritual realm and finally helped and supported him to become the Lord of the Mu territory. He also watched as Mu-Chen grew up, and so he has always treated Mu-Chen as his own child. The feelings they shared between them were naturally superb. Huh? You advanced into the spiritual movement stage? Mu Feng smiled and said in surprise when he looked at Mu-Chen. Hearing this, Zhou Ye also looked at Mu-Chen in surprise. As expected, he could detect the spiritual aura being emitted within Mu-Chen's body. I advanced into it a while back then. Mu-Chen nodded his head. Talking about this matter was a bit dull. There wasn't many exciting things about it. It seems that you came back for spiritual arts then? Mu Feng smiled. Only after you advance into the spiritual movement stage will you be able to learn spiritual arts. And by learning spiritual arts, you will then be able to release the true power of the spiritual energy. I have to fight against someone 10 days later. It might be a little troublesome if I do not learn spiritual arts. Mu-Chen curled his lips and explained the matter about Liu Yang's challenge when Mu Feng and Zhou Ye threw a suspicious gaze towards him. None of the people from the Liu family are any good. After Zhou Ye heard about it, his eyes became a bit vicious and he said, "The Liu family has become more and more arrogant these years. Although the Liu territory can be considered as the #1 in the northern spiritual realm, do they think that the Mu territory is weak?" Mu Feng let out a smile without care and said, "I can't imagine that Liu Yang would actually have a spiritual pulse. The Liu family truly is blessed." "It's only a human-level spiritual pulse," Zhou Ye said. However, he frowned a bit as he said this. He looked at Mu-Chen and said that Liu Yang's strength is also at the spiritual movement stage initial phase. With the help of the spiritual pulse, it wouldn't be easy for someone in the spiritual movement stage middle phase to deal with him. "Little Mu, do you think you can do it?" Mu-Chen smiled. He had already attacked someone with the heaven-level spiritual pulse. Why would he care about a mere human-level spiritual pulse? Compared to the insane individuals within the spiritual road, Liu Yang appears to be too inexperienced. Mu Feng looked at the innocent face of Mu-Chen. He could feel that his son changed after he came back from the spiritual road. Although this little guy would seem gentle and modest, Mu Feng was still able to detect a cold and sharp aura hidden underneath that gentle and innocent face due to his experiences of killing people. That sharp aura was like a dormant dragon. It's fine when it does not roar, but once it explodes out, it will definitely finish everything swiftly. That change made Mu Feng a little bit surprised and also a little bit pleased. He was greatly concerned about his only son. As for why Mu-Chen would be kicked out halfway through the spiritual road, he was puzzled, but he did not ask for more. He believed that his son would not do anything that would disappoint him. "Let's go. I'll bring you over to select some spiritual arts." Mu Feng stood up and waved his hand to Mu-Chen. Then he walked towards the backyard. After Mu-Chen greeted Zhou Ye, he swiftly followed. He followed Mu Feng and passed through the backyard. In the end, they stopped near a heavily guarded stone door. A forceful spiritual aura spread out from Mu Feng's palms, turned into rays of light and filled the stone door. Behind Mu Feng, Mu-Chen was able to feel the forceful spiritual energy fluctuations. He could not help but lick his mouth. Dad is indeed a powerful individual at the spirit stage. The fluctuations were actually this strong. Within the training, you will first start off at the sensing stage. You will sense the spiritual aura within the world. Following that is the spiritual movement stage. At this level, you will be able to absorb the spiritual aura into the body. After the spiritual movement stage is the spiritual rotation stage. You will be able to condense the spiritual aura within the body into a cycle. The degree of spiritual energy would far surpass the spiritual movement stage. Passing through the spiritual rotation stage, you will reach the spirit stage. This could be considered as the dividing level. Mu Feng is at this level. Once you stepped into the spirit stage, you could be considered to be a powerhouse within the northern spiritual realm. The powerhouses at this level have battle power far beyond the spiritual rotation stage. This is because you will be able to obtain a unique ability after reaching the spirit stage. It is the ability to ingest a beast spirit. The so-called beast spirit is the spirit of the million beasts of the world. Once you ingest it, you will be able to obtain some power from the spiritual beast. By combining it with your own spiritual energy, your combat strength will naturally soar. Within this heaven and earth, there is a beast record. It divides the numerous spiritual beasts within the world into two rankings, heaven and earth. And the spiritual beast spirit that Mu Feng had ingested was one that he found due to a lucky coincidence. It is known as the dragonfire bird. Within the earth ranking of the beast record, it is ranked 85. During the years when Mu Feng traveled throughout the northern spiritual realm and becoming the Mu territory lord, the spirit of the dragonfire bird has contributed a lot. Creak. While Mu Chen was distracted, the heavy stone door slowly opened up and the heavy creaking sound rang out. After the stone door opened up, a smell of dust rushed into their face. Mu Feng fanned using his hand and walked in. Mu Chen also hastened to keep up. A chamber appeared after passing through the stone door. Within the chamber, there were many dim firelights and rows of stone shelves began to appear in front of one's eyes. On the stone shelves, many scrolls of scripts began to flash faintly. Mu Chen's eyes shone as he looked at the various scripts within the chamber. It was obvious that they were all spiritual arts. Mu Feng clapped his hand. He looked at the chamber and stared at the deepest part for a moment. Then, he immediately said with a faint smile, "All the stocks of spiritual arts that your father has are here. You can pick any of them. I want to see which one you will select." Mu Chen's black eyes shone as he stared at the inside of the stone chamber. As the lord of the Mu territory, Mu Feng could be considered as one of the strongest individuals within the northern spiritual realm. The collection that he kept over the years would naturally not be weak. Towards his father, Mu Chen did not act polite at all. He hurried into the stone chamber and randomly picked up a script. He took a glance at it. Words of light emerged from the script. Common tier middle rank spiritual art, cloud flare. Mu Chen blinked. A spiritual art will normally be divided into gong fa spiritual arts, attack spiritual arts, and defense spiritual arts, etc. And these various spiritual arts will be divided into three tiers: deity tier, spiritual tier, common tier. Moreover, each of these tiers will be divided into high, middle, low rank. The cloud flare in front of his eyes is a common tier middle rank gong fa spiritual art. Mu Chen fiddled with the script for a while before lowering it down. It was obvious that he was interested in it. He slowly wandered into the depths of the chamber, occasionally picking up a scroll, but immediately putting it down again. Mu Feng followed behind Mu Chen slowly, allowing him to select any of the spiritual arts here. 100 sword spiritual art, common tier high rank. Book of Broken Mountains, common tier high rank. The numerous spiritual arts filled Mu Chen's eyes. Although the majority of them were common tier, Mu Chen knew that these spiritual arts would attract many individuals if they were brought out. Mu Feng's collection isn't something ordinary within the northern spiritual realm. After walking around for quite a bit of time, Mu Chen finally reached the very depths of the stone chamber. However, he has not found the right spiritual art for him. He raised his head and stared at the final stone shelf. 3 open jade boxes were displayed there. "You're quite ambitious. Your dad risked his life in order to obtain these 3 spiritual arts." Mu Feng saw the 3 jaded box that Mu Chen set his gaze upon and could not help but smile. Hearing this, Mu Chen walked over curiously. He then removed a scroll from one of the jaded box. The script was glistening and there was a bit of heat coming from it when he touched it. It was clearly not a common tier. "Dragon Blaze art!" Mu Chen scanned through the script. His eyes let out a tint of surprise. It's actually a spiritual tier, low-rank spiritual art? He understood the value of a spiritual tier, spiritual art. If it was brought to an auction, it cannot be obtained unless they are willing to spend at least 1,000,000 spirit coins. "Yes, I train in this Dragon Blaze art too. It was something I obtained the Dragonfire Bird spirit." Mu Feng nodded as he spoke. Mu Chen fiddled around with his script for a moment, then he took out the 2 other scrolls. One of the scrolls was called Trembling Heaven Tactic, and the other scroll was called Animate Appraisal. Both of them belonged to the spiritual tier low rank. Mu Chen did not want to let go of those 3 scrolls. He hesitated for a moment as he decided which one he should pick. "Have you chosen yet? These 3 spiritual arts are equal to each other. You can train in one of them first and switch if you find a more suitable spiritual art," Mu Feng said with a faint smile. Mu Chen hesitated for a while. His hand floated on top of the 3 scrolls. In the end, it landed on the Animate Appraisal. Although this spiritual art wasn't specialized in attacking, it had quite an effect on building the foundations. Mu Chen's hand was suspended on top of the Animate Appraisal. But just when he was about to make his selection, his heart suddenly trembled for a bit. Then his gaze drifted unconsciously towards the shadow of the 3 jaded boxes. He noticed that there was a black script covered with dust. What is this? Mu Chen was startled for a moment. His hand extended out and grabbed onto the black script. He scrolled through it and only noticed that a few blurred words floated up from the rough surface of the script. The Great Pagoda Art? Mu Chen stared at the 4 blurry words. His eyes were filled with doubt. Why did it not mention the rank of the spiritual art? Mu Chen gave a puzzled look towards Mu Feng, but he was surprised. At this moment, Mu Feng had a complex expression as he stared at the black script within his hand. It was an expression filled with yearning. "Dad?" Mu Chen asked. He then waved the script in his hand. "What is this spiritual art? Why does it not state the rank?" "It's just an ordinary spiritual art. You should pick another." Mu Feng retracted his gaze and said slowly. Mu Chen frowned for a bit. His hand played around with the black script. After a short silence, he smiled and said, "I want this." Mu Feng's body trembled. He stared at Mu Chen. He noticed that there was a stubborn expression within that boy's innocent face. "Do you really want to select this?" Mu Feng asked after a pause. Mu Chen nodded his head and said, "I don't know why, but I feel that I would regret it if I do not pick this." "Dad, just how did you get this spiritual art?" Mu Feng had a complicated gaze as he stared at the script. After a moment, he let out a long sigh and let out a bitter laugh. Then, with a voice that was only audible to him, he muttered, "Jing, he really is your son. That script was left behind by your mother. To be accurate, she left it for you. However, she also mentioned that I should let it gather dust if you do not select it." Mu Feng gently spoke. "Mom?" Mu Chen could not help but tremble a little bit. He muttered the unfamiliar, yet heart-shaking word. He has never seen his mother before. There was only a vague but gentle figure within the depths of his heart. Ever since he began to understand things, he did not inquire about his mother from Mu Feng. Mu Feng too did not mention her. It was as if the father and son tried to avoid the topic regarding a person important to them. "Mom should still be alive, right? Where is she?" Mu Chen held the script tightly. He hesitated for a moment before finally asking the thing he wanted to know the most. When he was young, he had carved many wooden sculptures. The wooden sculptures were exactly the same, but there wasn't a clear face on them. This is because the origin of the wood sculpture came from the gentle figure within his heart. Every single one of the wooden sculpture had traces of hope and longing. The matter regarding your mother is extremely complicated. It does not help if I tell you now. However, if you want to know about it, then you should train in this. Once you reach a certain level in it, you will naturally know. Mu Feng was silent for a long time, and he finally clenched his hands as he stared at Mu Chen. "Did Mom leave because of me?" Mu Chen suddenly asked. "You were the person that she was most worried about. Because of you, she was willing to throw away everything." Mu Feng did not give a direct answer. He only rubbed Mu Chen's head and said with a self-deprecating voice, "It's all because your father did not have the ability. I was not able to let your mother stay together with you. I had tried before, but I still failed." "I'm sorry." Mu Chen nodded. A brilliant smile appeared on his innocent face. "Dad, do you want to see Mom again?" "I want to. I really want to. I really want our family to finally reunite." Mu Feng lifted his head and murmured. A sense of longing also existed within it. Mu Chen gripped his hands tightly. The rough black script emitted a warm temperature. Shortly after, he lifted his head and gave a slight smile towards Mu Feng. "I'll select this. Don't worry, Dad, I will help you complete what you have failed at. If you believe in me, then I will let our family reunite with each other one day. Nobody will be able to stop it." Mu Feng stared at the boy with an innocent face but firm eyes. A rippling surge of bitterness appeared within his chest, causing his eyes to become red. He then nodded his head. "Jing, our son will not be someone ordinary." The sun shined into the courtyard with lush branches. It formed a beam of light. Within the beam, many tiny lights danced along with it. It made the whole courtyard seem very transparent. Mu Chen sat cross-legged on a stone chair. One of his hands was on his face. The other was fiddling with the black script. In the end, he selected the Great Pagoda Art. It was also a commitment that he made to his own father. However, even Mu Feng did not know what rank this Great Pagoda Art was. He could only vaguely tell that this thing was extremely powerful. As to why he said it was very powerful, the reason he gave was that it was because your mother was very, very powerful. Mother was very, very powerful? Mu Chen blinked his eyes. Mu Feng was able to lift up the entire family and create this Mu territory within the Northern Spiritual Realm. He became a famous powerhouse within the Northern Spiritual Realm. In fact, he could be considered as quite amazing. But if even he said that she was powerful, just how powerful was Mother? If Mother was that powerful, why did she fancy Dad? Mu Chen grinned. It looks like Dad had a wonderful encounter with Mom when he was young. It should be a good story. Mu Chen organized his chaotic feelings for a while. Then he gazed at the black script within his hand. He would have to fight Liu Yang 10 days later. That guy is also a person at the spiritual movement stage initial phase and possesses the human level spiritual pulse. Although he had met monsters with a much more powerful spiritual pulse at the spiritual road, but the spiritual road was somewhat peculiar. The so-called spiritual road is, in fact, a very enormous stage for a trial. The creators of the spiritual road are the 5 great academies. Every 3 years, the spiritual road will activate. The entry selection for the spiritual road was also quite strange. It was not selected through human means, but it was searched out by a divine artifact known as the Mirror of Judgment. This search was quite strange, but the people that were selected by this divine artifact were mostly people with excellent talents. In general, they would be able to enter and train at the 5 great academies once they successfully pass the spiritual road's trial. The spiritual road is formed in a world. In this strange world, nobody is able to use any energy. In other words, whether it is spiritual aura or Do Qi and Yuan Li from lower planes, nobody can use them within the spiritual road. The selected person would face many life and death experiences when they enter the spiritual road. Under the circumstance that they could not use spiritual energy, they could only use their own physical body and their own dexterity and wisdom to resolve a variety of dangers. This method of forcing them to a corner is the best way of tempering their willpower. When entering the spiritual road, the selected person would be told that if they want more power, then they must have an unshakable resolve. Only by controlling this resolve will they be able to become someone truly strong. In the 10 million years, 70–80% of the strongest powerhouses that came out of the 5 great academies had participated in the spiritual roads trial. Thus, you can see how important the spiritual roads trial is. This is also why many geniuses would go after it like ducks. The 5 great academies. Mu Chen clenched his fist tightly. He must enter that place. Not only did he promise her, but he would only obtain the qualifications to stand in the outside world if he comes out from the 5 great academies. Towards the outside world, Mu Chen was not aware of it that much. However, he would occasionally hear about it from Mu Feng. The Great Thousand Worlds he currently resides in is a vast, endless place. Many clans live here. The northern spiritual realm is just like a tiny speck of sand within an ocean. It is an insignificant place. Moreover, the Great Thousand Worlds interweaves with numerous worlds. However, those worlds could only be called lower planes. This is because this world seemed to be at a higher level than those worlds. The Great Thousand Worlds is the center of numerous planes. However, the ones that were able to come from a lower plane to the Great Thousand Worlds all possess amazing talent. They must be the strongest individuals in their world. Otherwise, they would not be able to break through the shackles of the world. Mu Chen had once overheard a conversation about the overpowered people that came from the lower planes in a higher-up meeting at the Northern Spiritual Academy. There were 2 that were the most well-known. Mu Chen did not hear their names, but he could hear their titles. Flame Emperor, Martial Ancestor. They were both domineering titles. They came from the lower planes, but according to Mu Chen's speculation, they were probably considered as a true sovereign within the Great Thousand World. That Martial Ancestor had once caused an enormous ruckus in the Great Thousand World. It was said that he charged into a rather powerful clan, the Ice Spirit Clan, within the Great Thousand World by himself. The Ice Spirit Clan could not stop the man who was holding a lightning staff. That one battle trembled the heavens. When that was known, the entire Great Thousand World was shocked, and it was rumored that he had done all of this in order to save the person he loved. In contrast, the unworldly Flame Emperor kept a low profile. However, it was rumored that he had gone to the Fire Spirit Clan, and the Fire Spirit Clan even asked an old ancestor who had lived for numerous years to come out. Yet he was not able to get the upper hand against the Flame Emperor and had to let the Flame Emperor leave. This stunned everyone from the Fire Spirit Clan. The powerhouses that came from the lower planes would still be as amazing as before and were overbearing even after they came to the Great Thousand Worlds. The outside world was really filled with excitement, making one extremely thrilled. However, Mu Chen also understood that he has not reached that level yet. However, he truly believed that he would be able to reach it if he had enough time. Muchen stared at the black script in front of his hand. A smile emerged on his innocent face. Then everything should begin from this. Muchen placed his hands together and slowly closed his eyes. The black script within his palm let out a warm glow. His eyes were filled with darkness. Muchen moved using his mind and urged the spiritual aura within his body to flow through the meridians in his arm and eventually into the script within his hand. Bzzzt. Soon after the spiritual aura was inserted inside, the script let out a subtle buzzing sound. Then the darkness began to be torn up, and something seemed to enter Muchen's body through his palms. Use your body as a pagoda to witness the road of a spirit. The mysterious and obscure chant seemed like an ancient bell sound. It quietly echoed in Muchen's mind. Then he quickly protected his mind and firmly memorized these chants. The ringing sound gradually dispersed. The training chant contained way too many things. Many of them were things that Muchen had not touched before. Thus, he wisely decided to put it aside for now and accept the parts that he could understand. However, the chant was so obscure that his brain was still in pain. He had never seen such a mysterious and complex chant. It was obvious that Muchen had extraordinary talents. Otherwise, he would not have qualified for the spiritual road. Within the mysterious chant, he understood the secret within it. Shortly after, he finally began to move the spiritual aura. Based on the chant, the root circulation within the meridians were all quite strange. If you were able to trace the lines, you would be able to discover that the path that it travels seemed like a strange tower shape formed within his body. The spiritual aura followed this weird meridian's route and began to circulate. The first circulation obviously uses up an enormous amount of energy. However, Muchen was able to fight back the tiredness and tried to maintain and complete the spiritual aura circulation. The strange meridian route was extremely difficult to circulate. Even if Muchen tries to desperately control, he would still fail repeatedly. However, he did not feel rash about it and maintained a calm state as he circulated it over and over again. This process lasted an entire afternoon. After repeated failures, a tiny portion of the spiritual aura finally passed through the final meridian under Muchen's careful control. When the spiritual aura passed through the final meridian, the originally transparent spiritual aura began to change. The color gradually became a dark and deep color. Only now can the spiritual aura be truly called spiritual aura. And although this dark spiritual aura seemed quiet and reserved, Muchen could vaguely feel that underneath this quietness is a hidden, overbearing, and fierce feeling. It was evident that the quality of the spiritual aura that came out through the great pagoda art was extremely high. It was not something that an ordinary spiritual art could compare with. The thing that Mother left behind was truly amazing. Muchen secretly thought to himself in excitement while he was completely sweaty. This dark spiritual aura quietly occupied Muchen's auracea. As long as he insisted on training this spiritual aura, it would definitely become massive. And in the moment that the dark spiritual energy occupied his auracea, Muchen's body violence shook. A sudden burst of dizziness appeared within his mind. He could feel that something was resonating with it inside his body. It was a wonderful feeling. It started from within Muchen's heart, but it soon vanished. What was that all about? Muchen recovered quickly. He was quite alarmed and quickly began to probe around within his body. However, he did not find anything wrong with it. It was as if the early feeling was just an illusion. However, Muchen firmly believed that it wasn't an illusion. Was it because of the great pagoda art? Muchen thought quickly. Then he looked at the dark spiritual energy within his auracea. He pondered about it for a moment, but he did not find any clues related to it. Thus, he could only give up. The great pagoda art was left behind personally by his mother. Although he had never seen her before, he believed one truth. His mother would not leave behind anything dangerous to him. Or is it because of this? Muchen suddenly moved his mind. He could only see that there was a black glow floating on top of the dark spiritual energy within his auracea. The black glow flashed, and then it returned back to its original appearance. It was actually a piece of black paper. On top of the black paper, there wasn't any writing, but you could vaguely see some extremely fuzzy lines. The black paper quietly floated within his auracea and let that dark spiritual energy warm it up. Within that simple and unadorned paper, a mystery that could not be described was revealed. Muchen stared at the piece of mysterious black paper. He was quite confused. That item was something that he obtained during the spiritual road. However, he did not see any effects from it ever since then. He was able to faintly tell that the mysterious black paper wasn't something ordinary. It was just that he didn't have the strength to unlock its secrets now. Was the previous resonance because of it? Mu Chen thought for a moment, but he shook his head. Although the black paper was mysterious, it was obvious that it did not cause the earlier commotion. He pondered seriously about it, but to no avail. Mu Chen could only finally give up and put aside this issue. He stared at the dark spiritual energy within his Orisia again. Based on the chant, the Great Pagoda art was divided into 3 levels. First being foundation, second being shape condensation, and third being tower form. However, he had not even reached the foundation level yet. He could only be regarded as just entering the initial phase. If he wanted to advance to the foundation level, it would require quite a bit of effort. Inside the courtyard, Mu Chen slowly opened his closed eyes. He looked at the sweat on his body and could not help but shake his head. The Great Pagoda art was definitely difficult to train in. It was already this difficult considering that it was just at the starting line. He really did not know when he would be able to train it into the tower form level and just how difficult it would be. I wonder by how many levels will this Great Pagoda art amplify my spiritual energy? Mu Chen's heart trembled for a bit. He was curious about it. A spiritual art had another important role. That is to amplify the spiritual energy. In general, a common tier high-rank Gong Fa spiritual art would be able to amplify the spiritual energy by 5 levels. A spiritual tier low-rank Gong Fa would be able to amplify the spiritual energy by 10 levels. The more levels it could amplify, the stronger the spiritual energy would be when it was released. You could also use this method to roughly distinguish just what rank the spiritual art is. Thinking up to this point, the curiosity within Mu Chen's eyes began to increase. He spun his hand around, and a dark spiritual aura emerged from his palm. Then he slowly gripped his palm, and his eyes began to boil up. He was going to test just how powerful this Great Pagoda art is. Inside the courtyard, Mu Chen's body stood up straight. His palms bent slightly and a dark spiritual energy gathered quickly within his palms. A faint and sharp fluctuation came out from it. Mu Chen sensed the spiritual energy within his palms. He could feel that subtle changes were happening within it. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly froze for a moment, and the gentle, dark spiritual energy within his palms suddenly trembled violently. It was like dropping a few water droplets into a boiling pan. Within that quaking vibration, the spiritual aura fluctuations also rapidly increased. Mu Chen's palms trembled slightly. He could feel that the spiritual energy was speedily amplifying. 1 level, 3 levels, 5 levels, 8 levels. When the spiritual energy had amplified to the 9th level, the vibrations within his hand became even more intense, and there were signs that the spiritual energy was escaping his control. It's only the 9th level. This isn't enough. Mu Chen frowned as he wrinkled his brow slightly. He could faintly feel that a wild horse-like spiritual energy was about to explode outwards. The 13th level. The black spiritual energy covered Mu Chen's palm. He solemnly looked at it. At the next moment, he moved his hand violently and bent all but 2 fingers. He then stabbed at the stone pillar in front of him at lightning speed. The sound of the wind breaking could be heard. Common tier middle rank attack spiritual art. Bone shatter finger. Mu Chen's 2 fingers had penetrated the stone pillar deeply. Cracks began to appear from where his finger had stabbed into. Mu Chen stared at the cracks as he retracted his fingers from within. He muttered to himself, 13th level. He nodded. He is only at the starting line for the Great Pagoda art, yet he was already able to amplify his spiritual energy by 13 levels. It was enough to prove how powerful the Great Pagoda art is, and Mu Chen could sense it that the amplification would only increase as he gets more skilled in it. The Great Pagoda art is at least a spiritual tier, high-rank spiritual art. Mu Chen grinned. The item left behind by his mother really isn't something ordinary. It was probably difficult to find a spiritual tier, high-rank spiritual art within the entire northern spiritual realm. However, this spiritual art was quite difficult to train in. Mu Chen was confident in his cultivation talent. But even so, it would still be difficult to train in this Great Pagoda art. However, I do not lack time, Mu Chen muttered and immediately clapped his hands as he turned back to return to his home. It looks like he must put all his effort into training this great pagoda art. Not far away from the courtyard, Mu Feng witnessed the events that happened. He could not help but let out a smile. Within that smile, you could see that he was quite satisfied. Little Mu's cultivation talent truly is outstanding. I had once trained in the great pagoda art before, but I was only able to the first batch of spiritual energy to circulate through after 5 days. And the first batch of spiritual energy only reached the 7th level of amplification. That boy actually successfully trained in it within half a day, and the level of amplification was that shocking. He really hurt my pride. Although he said this, Mu Feng could not conceal the prideful and delighted feelings within his eyes. Oh ho ho, little Mu's talent is truly amazing. He would definitely be someone that far surpasses the outdated fellows like us in the future. Zhou Ye also smiled as he nodded his head. His voice held a bit of longing. That's right, the northern spiritual realm may seem very significant to us, but for little Mu, it is way too small. In the next few days, Mu Chen focused all his efforts on training the great pagoda art. The boy may occasionally look like he was lazy, but deep down inside, he was extremely stubborn. It was this stubbornness that allowed him to have a distinguished reputation within the spiritual road. In the end, he even caused the massive event, which even numerous geniuses were stunned about. By focusing all his efforts, the spiritual energy within Mu Chen's aura sea had rapidly become thicker in just 7 short days. He was able to obtain a deeper insight regarding about the great pagoda art. However, it seems that he was still some distance before he reached the foundation level. This made him let out a sound of disapproval. The great pagoda art was truly something extraordinary. As his training in the great pagoda art was going well, Mu Chen relaxed a bit. Then he began to multitask and search through numerous scrolls to find a few suitable attack spiritual arts for him to learn. Although he has strengthened the base of his spiritual energy, it is still essential to have a few attack spiritual arts to enhance his combat abilities. And Liu Yang was not an ordinary person as well. He is ranked first in the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. This was enough to prove just how powerful he is. At the same time, his father was the Liu territory's lord. The Liu territory is the strongest territory within the Northern Spiritual Realm. It is even slightly stronger than the Mu territory. They often had many disputes with the Mu territory over the past few years and did not like each other. Although the Liu territory could not extend their reach to the Northern Spiritual Academy, they would still be able to give the best support to Liu Yang. However, was it really that easy to step on Mu Chen? Even the numerous geniuses within the spiritual road couldn't do that. A mere Liu Yang was far from being able to. At the training ground filled with stone blocks, a figure caused the dust to scatter around. Within his hands, a dark spiritual energy was constantly rotating, and it emitted faint fluctuations. Only 2 of his fingers weren't bent. Under the dark spiritual energy, an extremely sharp black stab landed onto a block of stone. Kacha! The shattered rock pieces exploded outwards, and cracks quickly spread through the block of stone. Within the boy's black eyes, a cold atmosphere passed through. The 2 fingers that were deep inside the block of stone moved violently, and with a muffled ringing sound, the waist-sized block was directly pierced through. The block of stone shattered. The boy did not stop and changed his hands from just fingers to a palm. With a faint sound of thunder, the dark spiritual energy surged through and he hit a stone block using his backhand. The moment the palm landed onto the stone block, the boy stood on just one leg. The other leg lashed out with power at another block of stone. Bang! Boom! The 2 muffled sounds rang out. 2 stone blocks shattered and crashed straight down. The gravel from it flew off to the open space. The boy slowly lowered his leg and maintained a calm atmosphere. The dark spiritual energy within his palms quietly dispersed. Clap, clap. Sounds of applause rang out from the side. Mu Chen looked and saw Mu Feng standing outside of the training ground with a smile. He was quite satisfied with the performance that Mu Chen had done earlier. It was like a tempest. The killing intent was hidden within the sharpness. It was in no way inferior to those his men that had honed it through battles of life and death. It looks like his son did not waste the year when he entered the spiritual road. Dad, Mu Chen patted the dust off his arm and walked towards Mu Feng. Are you returning to the Northern Spiritual Academy tomorrow? Mu Feng asked with a smile. Mu Chen nodded. If you are able to pass through the competition this time, you should be able to advance to the Heaven class of the Northern Spiritual Academy. At that time, you will be qualified to compete for a place within the 5 great academies. Mu Feng patted Mu Chen's shoulder as he spoke with a smile. A place within the 5 great academies, huh? Mu Chen stretched his waist and a smile emerged on his face. Dad, relax. I will definitely obtain that place. Northern Spiritual City, a city that was born because of the Northern Spiritual Academy. The city is basically like the Northern Spiritual Academy, and it maintains absolute neutrality within the Northern Spiritual realm. Furthermore, the one in control of this place is the Northern Spiritual Academy. This is why none of the disputes within the Northern Spiritual realm would spread over here. Thus, the Northern Spiritual City is a bustling location. Aside from a few cities in the major territories, it could be considered as one of the top cities within the Northern Spiritual realm. As the Northern Spiritual City was born due to the Northern Spiritual Academy, it was naturally a heavenly-like location for the students of the Northern Spiritual Academy. In this city, very few individuals would go against the Northern Spiritual Academy students, even without mentioning about the status of the Northern Spiritual Academy. After all, many of the students that came to train at the Northern Spiritual Academy would have some sort of a background. Furthermore, the sons and daughters of various territory lords would be among them. It would not be a pleasant thing if they offended these youths. When Mu Chen stepped out of the transfer spiritual array, he saw the scene of a bustling city. He rubbed his head, which was slightly dizzy due to the transfer, and then looked at the transfer spiritual array behind him. The arrangement of the transfer spiritual array is extremely troublesome. There are only a handful of large cities that had the ability to position it. It was obvious that the Northern Spiritual City had the ability to do so with the Northern Spiritual Academy's power. Mu Chen walked away from the transfer spiritual array and passed through a lively street. He went straight to the Northern Spiritual Academy, located at the center of the city. On both sides of the street, there were many stores. Amongst them, the spiritual arts vendors shouted out. However, Mu Chen did not have the slightest idea of staying there. His father is one of the 9 territory lords within the Northern Spiritual Realm. His collection would naturally be decent. Thus, the spiritual arts from these places naturally would not enter Mu Chen's sights. After turning around a couple of street corners, the magnificent Northern Spiritual Academy could be seen. Many groups of students from the Northern Spiritual Academy could be seen on the streets. As the boys and girls gathered together, sounds of laughter could be heard. It was filled with youthful vitality. In his surroundings, many people would gaze toward Mu Chen. A couple beautiful girls would send a curious and shy gaze towards him. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen could be considered as a celebrity. Without mentioning anything else, it would already cause others to tremble slightly within their hearts just by the fact that he had once obtained the qualifications to the spiritual road. After all, he was the only one to have obtained a spot for it. Although they did not know why Mu Chen was kicked out after being in the spiritual road for 1 year, but how could a person be ordinary if they obtained an entry for the spiritual road? Mu Chen did not care about the gazes that were thrown to him. He even smiled back. He had a handsome appearance, a gentle and brilliant smile, and eyes that were as black as the evening sky. Although he was roughly the same age as the other students, he possesses a unique disposition that the other innocent teenagers did not have. It was this disposition, coupled with the comforting face, that made the girls' cheeks slightly hot as they looked at him in secret. All of a sudden, a commotion rang out in the street in front. Many students quickly dispersed and a couple figures with a depressed expression ran over. They looked anxiously at the surroundings and an astonished expression appeared shortly after. "Brother Mu!" Several surprised shouts escaped from their mouth. "Luodong, what are you guys doing?" Mu Chen saw a few familiar people and was slightly bewildered. They were in the same cultivation class as him, and their daily relationship was quite good. "Brother Mu, hurry and help out Su Ling. He was hit by Mu Yuan." The boy named Luodong quickly responded. Mu Yuan? The surrounding students were shocked when they heard that name. The one that was number 2 in the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class, Mu Yuan? He was an aggressive fellow who was only slightly weaker than Liu Yang. Why would Su Ling dare provoke him? What happened? Mu Chen frowned. Su Ling could be considered to be his best friend within the Northern Spiritual Academy. A while ago, Mu Yuan came over to talk about nonsense. He said that Brother Mu would definitely lose tomorrow. Su Ling could not endure it and said a few things back at him. Then he was hit by Mu Yuan. "The West Branch really is too arrogant," Luodong said bitterly. Mu Chen's lip creased slightly. This made Luodong, who was beside him, shocked. He was quite familiar with Mu Chen, and naturally knew that once Mu Chen did this action, he was probably quite angry. "Bring me there," Mu Chen said. Ah, Luo Dong and the others were stunned. They quickly said, Brother Mu, we should still find a teacher first. There are many people over by Mu Yuan's side. Zhui Dong, who you defeated before, and the Xiao Kun, who is ranked number 6 in the Earth class, is also... It's all right. Lead the way. Mu Chen smiled and gently patted Luo Dong's shoulder. Seeing Mu Chen smile, Luo Dong and the others looked at each other. They immediately bit their teeth and nodded. At most, they would only be hit. But how could they allow those guys from the West Branch to think that the East Branch were all softies? Several people surrounded Mu Chen as they headed over there. Only a few stunned students were left on the street. However, they soon recovered and stared at the direction that Mu Chen and the others have departed for with a fiery passion. They quickly followed them and flew off. Judging from Mu Chen's earlier appearance, could he be planning to pick a fight against 3 violent individuals within the top 10 of the West Branch Earth class by himself? This was quite an explosive event. A muffled sound rang out and a figure was blown away fiercely. His body stopped only after it left a long trace on the ground. The people from the East Branch seemed to be bursting with too much self-confidence now. Even an unknown person would dare to yell in front of me, Mu Yuan. I really want to know just who gave you guys that confidence. A boy in black clothes crossed his arms and sneered at the 10 helpless individuals on the ground. The one that was leading those 10 men was Su Ling. At this moment, he was staring at the boy in black clothes as he gritted his teeth. Behind the boy in black clothes were 2 similarly aged boys. They too had a sneer on their face. They could not conceal the arrogance within their eyes. Surrounding them was a circle of students. However, they did not dare to speak. It was obvious that there weren't many who would dare to provoke these 3 individuals. Bah, Mu Yuan, stop acting so proud. You were lucky that Brother Mu wasn't here today. Otherwise, your 2nd rank in the Earth class would disappear, Su Ling said in anger. Mu Yuan raised an eyebrow, as if he was challenging him, and a boy behind him let out a cold harumph. He was the one that lost to Mu Chen, Shredong. That guy has a bit of skill, but I'm not afraid of him. Oh ho ho, I can't wait until tomorrow when the competition between the 2 branches is over. The East Branch would behave themselves then. Mu Yuan grinned and said, Brother Liu would let him know that it would be better off if he remained a low profile. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, we, the West Branch, is the strongest. I really can't wait to see his appearance when that guy loses, Shuodong said with a sneer. Only before that, I think I want to take care of you East Branch trashes. Mu Yuan interweaved his fingers and gently gripped it. It issued out a clear cracking sound and he headed towards Su Ling and the others with an evil expression. Noticing that Mu Yuan refused to stop, Su Ling and the other looked slightly pale. He soon shouted out, Let's desperately fight against him! Fight! These boys were still a bit courageous. If they showed no resistance in front of such a big crowd, it would be too shameful. They gritted their teeth and lifted their body as they charged towards Mu Yuan. A group of guys who haven't even advanced to the spiritual movement stage dare to attack me? How overly confident. Mu Yuan laughed as he saw this. A faint spiritual energy rose from his palms. Bang! He stomped heavily on the ground and darted out like an arrow. He jumped over the numerous charging figures and appeared directly in front of the panicking Su Ling. With a sneer, his fist brought a sharp wind, and he smashed directly at Su Ling's face. Su Ling stared at the swift wind coming from Mu Yuan's fist, yet it was simply too late to resist. He could only watch as the fist rapidly became bigger in his eyes. He closed his eyes as if he gave up and thought to himself that it looks like he had to lie down for a few days. Just when he closed his eyes, he seemed to hear a few screams coming from the surroundings. Then a muffled sound rang out, and the blast shook his face a bit. It didn't hurt as much as he imagined. He opened a tiny bit of his eyes and was stunned. A long white arm suddenly appeared from behind him, and it easily stopped the blast of wind coming from Mu Yuan's fist. Su Ling hurriedly turned around. He then saw the boy who made him feel relaxed. Brother Mu! Su Ling shouted in joy. You did a good job. At least you did not disgrace the East Branch's face. Mu Chen smiled at him. Then he looked at Mu Yuan and the others, whose expression changed slightly and said, I was the one that gave them that confidence. Is there a problem? I was the one that gave them that confidence. Is there a problem? When Mu Yuan and the others looked at the smiling boy in front of him, their expressions changed slightly. The sneer that they had in their eyes became a little bit more dignified. Apparently, they still held a bit of fear towards Mu Chen. How arrogant. However, Mu Yuan was the first to recover. He stared at Mu Chen and let out a cold He also advanced to the spiritual movement stage initial phase 7 days ago. The two individuals behind him, Shuidong and Xiaokun, was also about to advance. What would Mu Chen dare to do when there was such a formation against him? Shuidong and Xiaokun also quickly thought of this point. A tint of fierceness passed through their eyes, and the fear within them was weakened by a lot. I was only teaching them a little lesson today. In the Northern Spiritual Academy, it isn't the turn of the East Branch to butt in when we, the West Branch, are talking. Mu Yuan clapped his hands and let out a sneer towards Mu Chen. As for you, I think you would not dare to say such words after tomorrow. The surrounding students were all frozen and did not dare let out a sound. They stared at the arrogant Mu Yuan. The group of East Branch students were all furious within their hearts, yet they kept the resentment to themselves. After he said these words, he waved his hand as if he wanted to left together with the others. He had already displayed their authority and power today in order to weaken the authority and power that the East Branch had. Su Ling and the others were extremely angry and clenched their fists. However, the other side had a powerful momentum now. Even if Mu Chen had finally arrived, he would not dare to fight back against him now. I'm going to ask. A sound came from behind them. Mu Yuan and the others paused for a moment and turned back to stare at the boy standing in front of Su Ling. At this moment, Mu Chen had a smile on his face. Are you not intending to apologize before you leave? The surrounding sounds seemed to have become quiet. Many boys and girls stared at the smiling boy in a daze. Although Mu Chen had a brilliant smile on his face, they could feel a sharp chill from it. Su Ling and the others also froze for a moment. Then their face turned red. They did not believe that Mu Chen would still come forward for them when it was like this. Apologize? Mu Yuan's face turned grim. He let out a mocking smile and said, Why? He was used to being arrogant in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Is this guy crazy for asking him to apologize? Looks like it's useless to talk. Mu Chen nodded his head. Without saying anything more, he slowly walked towards Mu Yuan and the others. Mu Yuan and the others stared at the approaching Mu Chen with a dismal expression. Their eyes made contact for a moment, and they could see a hint of coldness within those eyes. Within the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen had always remained relatively low profile. Aside from defeating Shuidong, he had not done any remarkable deeds. However, no students within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class would dare to underestimate him. Even unruly people like Mu Yuan would still fear him. How could a person who qualified to participate in the spiritual road be an ordinary person? That's why. Do it! A cry came out from Mu Yuan's mouth. The spiritual energy violently surged through his arms. He stomped onto the ground and charged directly to Mu Chen. Behind him, Shuidong and Xiaokun followed him and kept to his side. These movements had quite the chemistry. A commotion broke out from the surroundings. It was evident that they did not imagine Mu Yuan and the others to be so straightforward. They did not hesitate to let out a combined attack. Moreover, they were all aggressive individuals within the top 10 ranks of the West Branch Earth class. Mu Yuan was the strongest out of the three. He had already advanced to the spiritual movement stage initial phase. Thus, his offensive was also the most ferocious. The spiritual energy wrapped around his palms and the winds coming from it were like blades. He hacked angrily at Mu Chen. However, just when the palm winds were about to hit Mu Chen, he gently took half a step to the side and his body passed by Mu Yuan. The eyebrows on his handsome face were slightly lowered, and just like a sharp sword become unsheathed, the originally gentle face instantly became cold and aggressive. He did not directly go against Mu Yuan, and instead went straight to the Shuidong and Xiaokun, who were slightly behind Mu Yuan, as he avoided Mu Yuan. The dark spiritual energy surrounded his fingers as he opened up his palm. A sharp sound of the wind could be faintly heard as the spiritual energy surged. He let off a smack towards Shuidong and Xiaokun. Shuidong and Xiaokun were surprised by this move of Mu Chen. However, they did not have any time to avoid it. They immediately bit their teeth and fired off a punch with all their strength. As long as they were able to stop Mu Chen for an instant, Mu Yuan would be able to turn back and aid them. When that happens, Mu Chen would be completely surrounded and open to attacks. Shuidong and Xiaokun had a ranking within the West Branch Earth class. Naturally, they weren't just any ordinary individuals. However, they still slightly misjudged the strength of the boy in front of them and the proficiency in his attacks. When the two fists exploded outwards, Mu Chen's palm suddenly skimmed through the surface of their punches. It violently went further down and landed on their wrists. He then pulled powerfully. The two of them had their bodies fly forward due to being pulled and the momentum of their punch. Their bodies became unstable. Mu Chen's palm wind passed through their arms, and like a snake charging out of a hole, it landed directly on their chest without any mercy. A deep sound rang out. Zhui Dong and Xiao Kun's bodies suddenly flew backwards when they let out an astonished expression. They landed heavily on the ground and issued out a scream. The clothes in front of their chest were completely destroyed. Just by exchanging blows once, Zhui Dong and Xiao Kun lost with ease. After Zhui Dong and Xiao Kun let out a cry, the surrounding students finally recovered. They could not help but grin carelessly. Wasn't it too fast? Mu Chen! An angry roar came from behind. When Mu Yuan noticed this scene, he was so angry that his face turned red. He did not imagine that Mu Chen would actually avoid him and take care of Zhui Dong and Xiao Kun first. Flame palm! A fiery red spiritual energy erupted above Mu Yuan's palms. As the spiritual energy rose, it was like a fire and made the air become a little bit hotter. The surrounding students exclaimed loudly. Is this the strength of the second rank of the West Branch Earth class? Mu Chen also turned around at this moment. He stared at the fierce Mu Yuan as he approached. His fingers clenched into a fist. There wasn't the slightest evasive action done, and a punch surrounded by a dark spiritual energy was fired out. The fist and palm bombarded heavily with each other. A surge of air expanded from it. The red and dark color intersected. However, Mu Yuan's face instantly turned blood red. His body violently trembled, and with a poochie sound, he spat out fresh blood from his mouth. He staggered a few steps backwards and finally sat down on his butt. With just one move, the victory was decided. Although they were both at the spiritual movement stage initial phase, but it was evident that Mu Chen's spiritual energy was more condensed and sharp. Mu Yuan could not compare to it at all. Zhui Dong and Xiao Kun, who was beaten to the ground earlier, let out an astonished expression. Mu Yuan had the strength of a spiritual movement stage initial phase. Why couldn't he even receive one of Mu Chen's punches? How is this possible? Mu Yuan also had a look of disbelief as he sat on the ground awkwardly. He did not even remember to wipe off the blood from his mouth. Brother Mu is amazing. Su Ling and the others were completely stunned. Soon they let out a face filled with ecstasy. They did not expect Mu Chen would still be able to achieve an overwhelming advantage when he was fighting against three of them. However, Mu Chen had a calm expression. He stared at the awkward Mu Yuan and smiled. Now, can you apologize? Mu Yuan's face changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Dream on!" Mu Chen seemed to have expected that he would say that. The smile on his face became even more splendid. He nodded his head and strode off towards Mu Yuan. A dark black spiritual energy slowly appeared once again on his palms. Mu Yuan stared at Mu Chen, who was approaching. He did not know why he could feel a chill when he looked at Mu Chen's magnificent smile. Mu Chen approached Mu Yuan. The dark black spiritual energy above his palm became more and more dense. However, when his foot stopped in front of Mu Yuan, a gentle clapping sound rang out beside him. Oh ho ho, as expected from a person that had participated in the spiritual road before. However, your actions seem like you do not care about the West Branch at all? Mu Chen tilted his head. He looked at the crowd as it separated. From there, a figure slowly came forward with a smile. When the nearby students saw him, they could not help but take a step back, and fear appeared within their eyes. Under the fearful gazes, the boy stood in front of Mu Chen. He had a somewhat handsome appearance. However, the corner of his lips revealed a sense of stubbornness as well as pride that could not be concealed. At this moment, he crossed his arms, and within the gaze that stared at Mu Chen, there was a disposition as if he was looking at his prey. It was the #1 person of the West Branch Earth class, Liu Yang. Mu Chen glanced at the boy who crossed his arms. He did not seem surprised and only calmly said, "You've watched the show for half a day now, so you finally couldn't resist coming out?" Mu Yuan, Zhui Dong, and Xiao Kun looked at Liu Yang. They were overjoyed and immediately shouted, "Brother Liu." When they turned their gaze at Mu Chen again, it had become a little bit more arrogant and aggressive. Mu Chen's reputation was not weak within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. Furthermore, he had defeated the three of them together just a while ago. However, there was still a bit of a gap between the person who was #1 in the Earth class. With Liu Yang backing them up, they naturally did not feel afraid of Mu Chen. Liu Yang stared at the humiliated trio. He frowned and gave a cold stare at Mu Chen. Mu-Chen, you probably have to give an explanation to the West Branch about this matter today? An explanation? Mu-Chen stared at the boy, who had the largest reputation in the West Branch Earth class, and smiled. They harmed the students from the East Branch for no reason. From what I see, you should be the one that gives an explanation to us. The surrounding students secretly grinned as they noticed the two of them confronting each other. These two individuals were probably the most outstanding ones within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. They originally planned on deciding the victor tomorrow. Nobody expected that they would face off each other today. Liu Yang narrowed his eyes slightly. A cold chill appeared in his eyes. Nobody would dare to be so rude to him within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. Although he had heard stories about Mu-Chen, he is still the #1 person among the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. You're still so arrogant. Liu Yang revealed a mocking smile. He stared at Mu-Chen. I'm really curious. For a person who obtained the Spiritual Roads qualification by luck and was kicked out forcibly, where did this arrogant spirit of yours come from? Anger appeared in Su Ling and the others' eyes as they heard these harsh words. However, they knew that Liu Yang wasn't someone that they could defeat. They could only hold in their hatred and gritted their teeth. You will know whether it is luck when you test it out. Compared to their anger, Mu-Chen only gently smiled as he spoke. Liu Yang's pupil shrank. It was evident that he did not think that Mu-Chen would dare speak to him like this. His voice gradually became colder. I originally planned on fighting against you during the competition between the two branches tomorrow. However, it seems that you are impervious to the situation you're in. I will take care of you now, so I don't have to waste time tomorrow. After saying this, Liu Yang took a step forward. The spiritual energy that arose was many times stronger than Mu Yuan in terms of density. Seeing Liu Yang's imposing manner, Su Ling and the others were surprised. That Liu Yang actually dared to attack now? They looked at Mu-Chen worriedly, yet they were only able to see a similarly aged, innocent face without the slightest fear. The black eyes reflected off dark light that people could not see through. Seeing Mu-Chen's calm appearance, Su Ling and the others' concerns faded a bit. Although Liu Yang was the #1 individual of the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class, Mu-Chen was not someone that weak as well. It would not be easy for him to take care of Brother Mu. You really are pushing your luck too much. Mu-Chen shook his head and curled his lips. The brilliant smile on the innocent face gradually became cold. On his palm, a dark black spiritual energy began to circulate around his fingertips. The atmosphere between the two of them became tense. Many students could not help but widen their eyes. The two individuals in front of them were the strongest within the Northern Spiritual Academy Earth class. They too were curious about who was stronger. Stop! Just when they were about to fight, a cry came out from a distance. Afterwards, the sound of the wind breaking rang out, and a burly figure appeared in between the two of them. Teacher Mo! When the students saw the person that arrived, they were suddenly surprised and hurried to let out their greetings. The middle-aged man that was referred to as Teacher Mo had a determined expression. Within his body, a striking amount of spiritual energy fluctuations were looming. It caused the nearby students to feel a little bit of pressure, and when they noticed him, even the arrogant Liu Yang straightened up a bit. The person in front of him is a genuine spirit stage powerhouse. Even within the Northern Spiritual Academy and Northern Spiritual Realm, he could be considered as a first-class individual. Naturally, he did not dare to offend him. If you want to fight within the Academy, you can do so at the Martial Stadium. Do you want to be punished for disgracing others outside? Teacher Mo looked around and said in a stern voice, Oh, what is Teacher Mo saying? We were just doing an exchange. Liu Yang smiled. He knew that he would not be able to take any actions today. He looked at Mu-Chen and extended a finger towards him. He gave a faint nod and said, I'll be waiting for you at the competition between the two branches tomorrow. After he said that, Liu Yang turned around and brought the people away with him. However, you could hear a faint murmur. He's only just a person who was kicked out of the spiritual road halfway? Su Ling and the others heard the deliberate murmur from Liu Yang. Their face turned pale and they said as they gritted their teeth, Brother Mu, isn't he being too arrogant? At least you were able to qualify for the spiritual road. Who the fuck does he think he is? Mu-Chen looked at the angry Su Ling. He could not help but let out a smile as he patted his shoulder. He said, Why are you getting so angry? If a dog bites you, do you have to bite him back? Even so, it doesn't feel good at all. True, it feels pretty terrible. Mu-Chen chuckled and a coldness appeared on the boy's innocent face. Although I won't bite him, but I enjoy beating them to death with a stick. I will beat him up so that he will not dare to make such noise again. That boy from the Liu family is truly shameful, like his father. Teacher Mo stared at the direction where Liu Yang departed to. He frowned as if he was slightly dissatisfied. He then turned to Mu Chen and let out a smile and said, "Well said, that suits my taste as well." However, it was said that Liu Yang is also at the spiritual movement stage initial phase currently. He also possesses the human-level spiritual pulse, so his strength is comparable to a spiritual movement stage middle phase. Are you certain that you would defeat him at the competition between the two branches tomorrow? Teacher Mo, please rest assured, I will not disgrace you. Mu Chen smiled. Teacher Mo managed the East Branch. If the East Branch lost too poorly at the competition, he would lose some face. We're going to head back first, Teacher Mo. Teacher Mo stared at Mu Chen, who was leaving together with Su Ling and the others, and waved his hand. He also smacked his lips. That boy is still quite young, yet there is something that could not be seen by others within him. You could not see the slightest bit of arrogance within the boy, but you are able to vaguely feel the sharpness hidden within his gentleness. That boy. He is indeed someone that can overwhelm the individuals from the spiritual road. If he was to successfully complete the spiritual road's trial, he would probably be like hotcakes to the 5 great academies. How would he still be here? Teacher Mo sighed. He was actually looking forward to the competition between the two branches tomorrow. It was said that the guy from the Liu family had made sufficient preparations. Who knows who would be the one to have the final laugh at the competition to determine the number 1 of the Earth class? The color of the night became darker. Within his room, Mu Chen quietly sat in a cross-legged position. His hands formed a seal. It was obvious that he had entered the state of cultivation. Near his body, the spiritual aura within the world fluctuated. Then they followed his breath and entered his body. As more and more of the spiritual aura entered Mu Chen's body, a faint, dark black light flashed on the surface of his body. Within his auracea, the dark black spiritual energy flowed. The density of it was many times stronger than what he had first started to train. It was evident that Mu Chen had placed quite the effort in cultivating it during this period of time. A trace of the spiritual energy circulated through the cultivation route of the great pagoda art. In the end, it turned into a dark black spiritual energy and entered his auracea. It caused a vigorous feeling as it became more intense. Currently, Mu Chen had gradually become skilled in the great pagoda art, but he has not been able to reach the foundation level yet. However, he could faintly feel that step would not be very far away. Mu Chen did not become rash or impatient. He quietly exerted restraint on the spiritual energy that was being infused to his auracea. When the final traces of the spiritual energy entered his auracea, he could feel a tremble within it. The dark black spiritual energy within his auracea surged. It actually swelled up at an alarming rate, and strength began to flow through his limbs. Mu Chen was a little bit startled by the change within his auracea. He could not help but chuckle loudly. It really was unexpected that he actually broke through at this moment. The following day, when the hot sunlight showered down onto the Northern Spiritual City, gradual signs of hot-headedness appeared within the Northern Spiritual Academy. The Northern Spiritual Academy is divided into East and West branches. There is considerable competition between the two branches. However, it must be mentioned that there will only be growth when there is competition. This is why the Northern Spiritual Academy had produced many outstanding students during the past 2 years. Among the competition between the two branches, the Academy competition, held once every couple of months, was the most fiery and fierce. The rankings of many individuals within the Academy would be decided during the Academy competition. A youth will ultimately seek to prevail over others. In addition, who wouldn't want to show off in front of the many beautiful female seniors and juniors? Because of this, many students would put in a lot of effort to obtain decent results at the Academy competition. At the west area of the Northern Spiritual Academy, there was a vast arena-like space. Many rings for martial competition were distributed through it. Near the rings, there were many stone staircases that acted as seats. Right now, these seats were all completely filled with a sea of humans. All kinds of sounds, such as conversation and whispers, gathered together. Moreover, it was mixed with a tinkling sound of laughter from the young girls, and it filled the atmosphere with a youthful vigor. Within the large stadium, there were many people. However, it was clearly divided into 2 sections. That is the West Branch and the East Branch students. Because of the competitive relationship they shared, the 2 sides would occasionally provoke each other, making the atmosphere particularly lively. We, the East Branch, only occupied 4 seats out of the top 10 within the Earth class. Moreover, the top 3 were all occupied by the West Branch. I really don't know if there will be any changes after this academy competition. We, the East Branch, also have a number of powerful individuals. Liu Feng and Tan Qingshan are rumored to soon reach the spiritual movement stage. If they succeeded, then it would be possible for them to reach the top 5. At the seats of the East Branch, a few students talked to each other. On the side, Su Ling heard the conversation and pouted his lips. He said, "You're not even aware of the main point of the academy competition. It doesn't matter how many seats the East Branch is behind. As long as Brother Mu obtains first place, the West Branch would not dare to bark at us." The East Branch students looked at each other and immediately sighed. Although what he said was correct, Mu Chen would still need to defeat Liu Yang in order to become number 1 of the Earth class. It was rumored that he possesses a human-level spiritual pulse. "Brother Mu, this time we, the East Branch, are all counting on you." Su Ling grinned at the boy in front of him as he spoke. Mu Chen only smiled, but his eyes remained at the stadium. Although it had not officially begun, there were already a few students beginning to fight in the ring. Just when Mu Chen stared at the stadium, a ruckus sounded out from behind him. Then a fragrance came over as a graceful and slender figure appeared by his side. A sweet voice appeared. "Oi!" Mu Chen tilted his head to stare at Tang Qianer, who appeared beside him. The latter wore a jaded green outfit. Her bouncing black ponytail and extremely pretty face attracted many fervent stares over from the surroundings. Tang Qianer was a student from the East Branch Heaven class, and she was extremely beautiful. She had an amazing personality as well. Thus, so there was no shame for her to be considered as one of the flowers within the East Branch. No matter where she goes, she would naturally attract a variety of envious eyes. "Why did you come?" Due to Tang Qianer appearing here, Mu Chen was a little surprised. This should be the period when the Heaven class students are training, right? "I came here to cheer for you." Tang Qianer smiled. She joked around and said, "And in case you were beaten down completely, I can still carry you back." "Why, thank you." Mu Chen shook his head sourly. "Hey, will you be fine? You had a conflict with Liu Yang yesterday, so he probably made up his mind to cause trouble for you today." Concern filled Tang Qianer's eyes. Although teasing is just teasing, she also understood the importance of today's events. Otherwise, she would not throw aside her cultivation course and run over here. "I'll do my best." Mu Chen smiled. Just when he started to speak, his expression suddenly changed. He raised his head up to stare at the other side. In the center of the West Branch's seats, a cold gaze stared directly at him. It was Liu Yang. Others such as Mu Yuan and Shui Dong gathered near Liu Yang's side. At this moment, they were all sending out challenging sneers over to this side. Mu Chen and Liu Yang exchanged gazes from afar. At the place where the gazes intersect, sparks seemed to flash over there. The two of them were both well-known individuals within the two branches, and many people knew what the main show was for today. This is why their confronting gazes made them grin. It seems like the today's show would not escape them. Liu Yang stared at Mu Chen. Then his attention turned to Tang Qianer, who was beside him. He could not help but grit his teeth. When he looked at Mu Chen again, the gaze turned colder again. How troubling. Mu Chen was able to discover all these subtle changes. He then looked at Tang Qianer as he spoke. Everybody in the Northern Spiritual Academy knew that Liu Yang liked Tang Qianer. However, he had never gotten a good look from her. Aside from the grudge held between their fathers, Mu Chen would sometimes think that Liu Yang was against him so often because of the jealousy that Tang Qianer was close to him. "If you dislike me giving you trouble, then I'll leave," Tang Qianer said with a straight face. Mu Chen could not resist laughing. His black eyes stared at Tang Qianer. The boy's bright eyes made the girl blush slightly, but as a stubborn person, she still managed to stare directly at Mu Chen. "If it's him, he shouldn't be considered trouble," Mu Chen said with a smile. You just know how to boast. Say that after you won." Tang Qianer pouted her lips and she glanced at the stadium with her beautiful eyes. Her pretty face suddenly changed and she whispered, "That guy actually came as well." Mu Chen's line of sight followed hers over. His expression was also startled for a moment. Not only him, the entire East Branch seats instantly became a little quieter. Their gaze landed at the West Branch seats. There were a couple individuals at the age of 17 to 18. They were older than the other Heaven class students by a bit. At this moment, these individuals were all leaning on the rail and lazily stared at the ring within the stadium and would occasionally crack jokes. It was obvious that their attention was not on the stadium. At the center of those individuals, there were two figures that stood out the most, a boy and a girl. The girl had a bright red dress, and her peach-like eyes were extremely attractive. It was Hong Ling from the West Branch. The other figure was a person dressed up in white. He had a tall stature and a handsome appearance. At this moment, he vaguely glanced through the West Branch area. The areas that he glanced upon instantly became quiet. It was evident that their momentum was oppressed. It's actually Liu Mubai. I didn't think that he would come as well. Su Ling gulped and said with a dry voice, if they were facing Liu Yang, they would still be able to have a bit of fighting spirit within their heart. However, in front of Liu Mubai, they were not able to produce the slightest bit of courage, because Liu Mubai is the true #1 within the Northern Spiritual Academy. Ever since he entered the Northern Spiritual Academy, nobody was ever able to shake his #1 position. Mu Chen's gaze stared at the dazzling figure in white. His black eyes exchanged gazes with him. Even from a distance, it still seems that there was an oppression enveloping them. The four eyes exchanged gazes. However, within Mu Chen's eyes, the fear that the other students have did not appear. This calm exchange of gazes made the figure in white a little surprised, and he frowned. Oh, that boy has quite the charisma. Beside Liu Mubai, the seniors from the West Branch actually noticed that Mu Chen was not afraid of Liu Mubai. Hong Ling's eyes also stared at Mu Chen when he exchanged gazes with Liu Mubai. The boy's face seemed to be slightly immature, but it made others feel calm. It felt that even the genuine #1 of the Northern Spiritual Academy was not able to impact him. She could not help but become entranced. The timid boy that had followed her back then really changed a lot. Big brother! A sound came over from nearby. Liu Yang stared happily over to this side. Liu Mubai gave a nod towards Liu Yang. Then his hands clenched onto the railing. He did not say anything, but the atmosphere at the East Branch shrank a bit. On the other hand, the West Branch's momentum expanded by taking advantage of this. It was evident that Liu Mubai purposely came over to subdue their momentum. With his position in the Northern Spiritual Academy, even the East Branch Heaven-class seniors would not dare to confront him. And just when Liu Mubai's imposing manner oppressed the audience, a crisp bell sound rang out suddenly. This made many students recover their focus. The Academy competition was finally about to begin. The crisp sound of the bell rang out through the skies. Beneath it, the lively atmosphere also reached its peak. Directly at the north of the stadium, three figures were sitting side by side. The person at the left was Teacher Mo that appeared yesterday. The person at the right was a middle-aged man with a skinny face. His face was tense and his eyes were slightly sunken. He seemed to be quite strict. Oh, the Academy competition this time seemed to be livelier than ever. In the main seat between the two individuals was a white-haired old man. He smiled as he stared at the fiery atmosphere below and laughed. The situation was mostly clear for the past Academy competitions, but this one is somewhat difficult to predict, Teacher Mo said with a smile. Why is it difficult to predict? Liu Yang is currently at the spiritual movement stage initial phase. Coupled with his human-level spiritual pulse, he would probably be ranked rather high up, even within the heaven class. Although that Mu Chen is pretty good, there is still a bit of a difference between him and Liu Yang. The stern middle-aged man seated at the right curled his lips. He was the highest level instructor for the West Branch. He naturally wanted the West Branch students to get the best results. Teacher Shi, it is not wise to look down on a person who qualified for the spiritual road, Teacher Mo muttered. Unfortunately, that is only said for the ones that successfully passed through the trial within the spiritual road. The stern middle-aged man shook his head as he spoke. The white-haired old man heard the dispute between the two of them and smiled. Apparently, he had long been accustomed to it. His muddle eyes looked at the seat within the East Branch and stopped at a boy with a thin body. He said, "It's a pity. Our northern spiritual realm haven't had a person who qualified for the spiritual road for over 10 years. This Mu Chen obtained the qualifications, yet he was kicked out halfway. He never experienced the final stage of the spiritual road, so his one-year trial within the spiritual road was considered in vain. This even wasted 1 year's time of training for him." Teacher Mo nodded regretfully. They weren't able to cultivate spiritual energy within the spiritual road. However, they were able to obtain spiritual energy empowerment if they successfully passed through the final stage of the trial. If they were extremely talented individuals, it wasn't impossible for them to advance to the spiritual rotation stage or even the spirit stage within one night. Originally, Mu Chen would have become the strongest individual within the younger generation in Northern Spiritual Realm if he passed through the trial. The space for the 5 great academies would also be properly delivered to his hand, and nobody would be able to compete against him for the qualifications. At that time, even a person like Liu Mubai could only be below him. However, who would have expected this unforeseeable event of being kicked out halfway? Mu Chen failed to obtain the most valuable spiritual energy empowerment from the spiritual road and was kicked out halfway. Because of this, he had wasted an entire year of time to cultivate spiritual energy. Principal Xiao, what on earth did Mu Chen do in the spiritual road? Why would he be kicked out halfway through? I know that boy's talents, his disposition is also excellent. He would never have been kicked out due to poor results. Teacher Mo frowned. He could not help but ask. He only knew that Mu Chen caused some sort of commotion within the spiritual road, but he was not aware of the details. When he heard this question, the stern middle-aged man also looked at the principal of the Northern Spiritual Academy. It was obvious that he was also curious about it. On the other hand, Principal Xiao gently stroked his beard and gave a bitter smile when he heard this question. He said, "I'm not too sure about it either, but I heard that the commotion that he caused in the spiritual road was not small. It even startled the higher-ups of the 5 Great Academy." Teacher Mo and the stern middle-aged man were both stunned. Their eyes had suspicion within them. They never imagined that Mu Chen caused an event that would startle the entire world. Well, let's not talk about this now. The bell has rung already. It is time to announce that the Academy competition has started. It was obvious that Principal Xiao did not want to say any more about it, and immediately waved his hand as he spoke. Teacher Mo nodded after he heard him speak. He stood up and glanced at the entire place. A deep, forceful voice echoed within every student's ears. "It is time now. The Academy competition has started. Remember, you are not allowed to kill during the duel between the 2 branches. You should all know the rules already. The ones that step onto the ring have an opportunity to challenge their opponents. However, you only have one chance, so you should know your limits and pick a suitable opponent." "Yes!" Within the venue, the dense pack of human respectfully replied, "Since it's like this..." Teacher Mo nodded and waved his hand. "Let it begin." Right after his hand was lowered, another loud bell sound rang out. It almost spread through the entire Northern Spiritual Academy. "Liu Xiong, hurry and come down here. I've disliked you for a long time. Chen Tong, you should also come out as well. This time, I'll pay you back from last time." Mu Chen stared at the messy scene within the venue. He could not help but smile. However, the majority of these duels were rather ordinary, so he did not care too much about it. He would only occasionally look in the direction of the West Branch's Liu Yang. Liu Yang, too, was staring coldly at him. By now, everybody in the Northern Spiritual Academy knew that Liu Yang had mentioned about selecting Mu Chen as his opponent during the Academy competition. Thus, nobody in the West Branch dared to challenge him first. Of course, with Mu Chen's strength, the West Branch students also knew that the only one who was qualified to be his opponent was Liu Yang. They were quite looking forward to the duel between the 2 most excellent students from the East and West Branch Earth class. Mu Chen did not care about the cold stare that Liu Yang gave towards him. He would occasionally talk softly with Tang Chener, who was beside him. However, this action only caused Liu Yang to grit his teeth even more. The duels within the stadium were quite lively. However, the ones that attracted the most interest were the students ranked rather high up within the Earth class, because only those duels would be able to change the rankings. "That's our East Branch's Tan Qingshan." Sure enough, he took action. Su Ling, who was beside him, suddenly let out an excited shout. Mu Chen's gaze also followed it over and looked. Not far away from them, a boy in black clothes stood up and walked towards a ring. The boy looked quite skinny, and his face looked slightly pale. However, he pursed his lips tightly to show his determination. He did not speak or smile. It was as if he didn't hear the sounds from his surroundings. "Tan Qingshan." Mu Chen stared at the boy in black clothes and was slightly startled. He was somewhat familiar with him. Tang Qingshan was considered to be the strongest person within the East Branch Earth class before he came to the Northern Spiritual Academy. Even now, he would be able to reach the top 5 among the Earth class students. Tan Qingshan also noticed Mu Chen's gaze. His body paused for a moment, and he raised his head to glance at him. A faint smile appeared on his silent and unsmiling face. "Good luck." Mu Chen gave a smile to him. Although he was not particularly close to him, they were still East Branch students, and so he did not dislike Tan Qingshan. Tan Qingshan nodded. Then he jumped onto a ring. Suddenly, many eyes shot straight towards him. Within the East Branch, Tan Qingshan had quite a bit of reputation. "I wonder who he is going to challenge," a few people whispered, and their eyes were filled with curiosity. There probably aren't many individuals within the West Branch that Tan Qingshan would regard as an opponent, right? Liu Yang. Under the many gazes, Tan Qingshan's gaze stared directly at a figure in front of the West Branch. His quiet voice caused a large uproar. He actually wants to challenge Liu Yang? Many students looked at each other, although Tan Qingshan was considered to be someone ranked high up within the Earth class. But there was still a large gap between him and Liu Yang. Nobody even imagined that he would take the initiative to challenge him. Within the West Branch's seats, Liu Yang was also startled for a moment. His eyes soon became depressed. Currently, Mu Chen hasn't been challenged by anyone, yet he was already challenged. Wouldn't that make others feel that Liu Yang's intimidation was weaker than Mu Chen? Conceited guy, Liu Yang stood up. That gloomy atmosphere caused the West Branch students nearby to shudder. It was obvious that Liu Yang was quite terrifying at this moment. Liu Yang jumped straight into the ring. He stared at Tan Qingshan. Then he looked at Mu Chen. He said with an expressionless appearance, "Did you find someone to test me out first?" When his voice dropped, he did not wait for Mu Chen's response and stared down at Tan Qingshan. The smile he gave was a bit ghastly. "Ignorant trash. Do you still think that you're the #1 person within the East Branch Earth class?" Tan Qingshan stared at Liu Yang. His eyes became a lot more serious. He was once the strongest student within the East Branch Earth class. Although that title was transferred to Mu Chen later, his prideful self continued to work hard and train. The relationship he shared with Mu Chen was more like a competitive relationship. After all, they were both East Branch students, so he would not cause trouble for Mu Chen. However, if he was able to defeat Liu Yang here, he should be able to retrieve back his first place. Tan Qingshan grasped his palms tightly. A deep yellow spiritual energy surged throughout his body and finally wrapped around his arms. A fierce, imposing manner slowly emitted out from his body. This spiritual energy... Suling and the others were surprised as they stared at the spiritual energy above Tan Qingshan's arms. He also advanced to the spiritual movement stage. Spiritual movement stage? That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.